if you're somebody that's only got $400 or $500 to spend, how do you take a low budget DSLR like that and make it cinematic?
So the most important aspect of it is that you need to understand and know the science and the technology of what you're using. Because once you understand why things can do certain things, like why a camera can shoot in low light versus not low light, why a micro four thirds sensor is different than a full frame sensor, why a lens can shoot more open than this lens. Once you know all of that science behind it, and the same thing with lighting, because cinematography and camera work is 90% lighting. You can't shoot in a dark room. Once you know all that, then you can understand when you can break the mold and use certain things.
Yeah, it's so true. Knowing your camera's limitations, like knowing what you're working with, understanding what your sensor can do, understanding that, and then lighting. If you can do those two things, dude, you could still work with a Canon T2i and make something look phenomenal.
Yeah,
like there's
absolutely.
So much, it cracks me up. Like when you see people, oh well, I don't have a Red Monstro or I don't have an Alexa Mini. It's like, dude, there's tiers to this. Like unless you're shooting something that's going to be seen on film, unless you're going for a specific look, because there is certain looks you can't replicate, and it is important to mention that. Like if you're shooting on a full frame, Alexa Mini, and you're using anamorphic lenses, there's a look to that you're not going to be able to replicate. But that's like the upper echelon. That's like the upper 3%. Like there's another 97% of cameras. You can get up to that 97% using a camera that only cost $1,000 or less if you know what you're doing. And I think particularly nowadays, man, like there's really no excuse. Like if you feel like you can't go out there and you can't, make your short film, or you can't make something look beautiful, it's on you. You're not putting in the work, and you're not understanding your camera, or you're not understanding lighting. And by the way, I also think something important to point out is there's a tremendous benefit to learning on a lower end camera like that, because there's less room for error. There's way less room for error. I mean, it sharpens the blade. Like when you use some of these reds, or even you're shooting uncompressed RAW, it's like you can expose pretty bad and you still will be able to bring it back in post. And it's like, that's not a good habit to get into. You want to start off learning on something that's smaller end and just understand. There's a few big keys for me. It's like, honestly, exposure is so important. And that plays into what you're saying. Important. Like, it's the most important thing. Like, if you can nail exposure, I swear to God, you can work with a camera under $1,000, and you can bring it into Premiere, throw a little color grading on it, and you can look better than so much other content that's out there. But it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of time and energy to actually understand what your camera can do. Like when I'm working with different cameras, I shoot sometimes with just a Sony a6300, but I know how that has to be exposed. I know that the way it looks on the monitor, or even through the viewfinder, I know that it always looks like it's a little underexposed, but the truth is it's not. You know what I mean? Like understanding your camera and knowing the little quirks and the kinks in it is going to help you so much. And by knowing that, I can go into a situation and the average person would come in and look at it and they'd be like, hey, dude, you're way underexposed. And it's like, no, I understand my camera. I know what I'm doing. And then once you bring it in and you blow it up and you're on the computer and you actually see it, you're like, oh, okay, that does look better. And then you can work within those parameters and you can make it look better. But there's something to starting off, especially with a lower end camera, that really sharpens the blade, and it forces you to be more precise because there's less room for error.
If you're a race car driver, right, you're going to start off on dirt tracks with, a custom, old school BMW you got for $2,000 that you worked on the weekends. You're going to work your way up until you learn how to drive and you learn how to get better. Then you're going to upgrade to a faster car and a faster track. And then at some point you'll be at NASCAR, driving these 200 mile an hour, zipping around kind of thing. But it's like, you're not going to, why waste $30,000 on a Red when you can learn on a $2,000 Sony camera? Because the settings do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, it all depends on where your skills are at and what you need it for.
Take it from a guy like Roger Deakins. Like, he's got the craziest, wackiest lighting setups you'll ever see. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, this man could go into Home Depot and he rigs up a bunch of different lights that he bought, and he's bouncing off of things. He's bouncing off of the corner of walls and stuff, and he's creating, you know, like this arc around a lot of his subjects, and it's done in such an affordable way that I almost wish everybody could see it, because when you see it in person, it really makes it feel like, okay, now I have no excuses. If this guy's doing that, you know, if you can get a nice lens, I always tell people, like, you just need to get a sensor that's on par. And if you can get a nice lens and understand lighting, you're off to the race. You're going to be better than literally 90% of people out there.
I feel like that's a huge misconception, is people confuse cameras and sensors. For
big time.
Lenses. Like, somebody sees a quality of an image and they want to know, you know, like, why does it look so cinematic? Well, it's mainly probably because the lens they have on. If you put up footage from an Arri Alexa and a Blackmagic, and you did the same kind of color grade on it with the same lens on it, there's not a chance you'd be able to tell the difference between the two.
And it's used as a B camera all the time for the Alexa.
Yeah. And one costs $50,000 camera, and one is a $6,000 camera.
It's unbelievable.